the recording button has not appeared yet. So, okay. I think it's recording now.
Going on?
The screen is black, but I think if we could get a shout out from somebody to see if there's everyone on.
We can see everything, Miss A.
Oh, good, thank you.
Okay, great. Okay. All right. Welcome to the 20th Ask the Chief, West Coast version of the forum. I'm going to start out a little bit different with the exercise. I'm just going to do the bump first, and then we're going to use that energy to do the rest of the exercises. Okay, so what are you missing something?
Welcome to the.
Okay, well, anyway, I'll just go ahead. And we're going to do the bump. And hands about 12 inches apart. And if you don't feel the energy, let me know. Okay, good. I'm going to increase that. And if you don't feel the increase, let me know.
Chief, it's Nelly. I'm having a hard time.
Okay, I'm going to focus on you, Nelly. Going to put your hands a little closer together, just a tad. Feel that vibration. Okay, let's say someone's got something purging off. Okay, Nelly, are you feeling it at all? Let me know what
Yes,
you do.
Chief.
Okay, great. Intensifying. All right. Now we're going to use that energy. And we're going to do the first exercise is pulling up the density that's in your energy. Pulling it more to the surface, starting now. I'll do 5 of these. 3. And 4. And 5. You feel a little bit of difference in your energy and your whole body with that. Now we're going to contain it. 1. 2. And 3. Okay, all that to protect the forum, protect your space, protect your energy, push out everything that could be invading your space, pushing out. 2, 3, and 4. Okay. Good. Hope everyone felt that. So Mrs.A.
Yes.
We left off, we're at, because we're going to resume the review of Monsters, Inc.
So it's the 20th. Did you already say that?
Yeah, I just
Sorry.
Said the 20th.
Thank you.
Anyway.
Okay, I'm not wicked. Okay. So we're starting out right where Sully, he ended up being, you wanted to talk about how Sully went to water news.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I believe we got to this point in the movie where Sully goes to Water News to tell him what Randall's doing with this little scream extraction machine, and that he's got this little kid as a victim, or was it as a hostage?
Yeah.
So there's a True Logic that was posted 2 days back that has to do, it's like in the eyes of the system, the whole world is collateral damage. And, a lot of people got, what I was talking about, and I got a sense that some weren't quite sure exactly what I was talking about. So the example of Waternoose, the character Waternoose, the CEO of Monsters, Inc., when they came to tell him what was going on, what this character Randall was doing, this nefarious project they had going on, it turned out that Waternoose was a part of it. And when I talk about the system, I talk about everything connected to the system, which is government, corporations, all these institutions that exist in the world. And there are individuals through movies where you've seen a number of movies, some of the similar stuff here, but different movies where someone will find out that there's a government official with a really evil plot to take over or whatever the world or whatever, and they say, oh well, I'm going to tell the press, and the press is going to put it out, and then everybody's going to know that you're a bad guy, and in the problem. When in reality, everything, including the press, your general press, tends to be part of that system. So it's like this very naive way of looking at the world, because you've been trained by movies or even certain institutions, educational institutions, that will tell you that the system is here to help you and so on and so forth. And there's been numerous individuals who found that that's not the case. So they figured out there's got to be somewhere where I can get justice, this elusive justice, by going to the system to get it. So what happened with Sully, he goes to Waternoose and tells him that Randall, the little evil, slimy guy, is up to some really bad stuff. And then, Waternoose says, something to the effect that even though Sully was the highest ranked scarer employee, and he says, oh, it's too bad that you had to stumble upon this, what's going on, this evil plan. Okay, dude, we're going to have to bump you off. So literally, when we talk about collateral damage, it's something that came up in the, I believe, maybe the mid to late 90s, where they would talk about supposedly going after some terrorist with drones in some Middle Eastern country or even North Africa or whatever, and they would shoot a missile and they would blow up a building, but there are other buildings nearby and people walking through, and everyone gets killed. People who had nothing to do with whoever this person is that they're supposed to be, going after, and they would always say, oh, well, it's collateral damage. So literally, it just talks about the system sees everyone as collateral damage. So even if you are part of the system, those who get into the system, from the human side that is, they're still expendable. And that happens in politics and so on all the time, even with the thing that happened, excuse me, near the end of Bill Clinton's administration with the Monica Lewinsky thing. That, you got a DJ in the Oval Office, oh my goodness, when I believe the majority, if not all these guys, are getting DJs in their office. But whatever reason they decided that they wanted to besmirch his name, they decided, or they'll point to certain guys who are doing the exact same things, but this person is on the out, and those people are afraid to actually say that all the rest of these guys are into some nefarious stuff themselves. So again, literally, that's what the true logic was about. The system is not your friend. The system does not see you as a viable being. You're just fodder, collateral damage. Okay, so that particular scene in Monsters, Inc., that's literally what Waternoose was saying. So, my I would say mission, because I don't really call those things missions. It's just like these plans, these really nefarious plans. are more important than your existence, other than you just being food. You know, they can feed off you while you're not aware, but when you become aware, then it's like, oh, time to cull this one out of the pack. So from there, we'll get back into the movie, into the review. And so what do we have coming up next?
Okay, so after that, Sully and Mike are banished to, I believe it is Nepal, wherever the abominable snowman is. That's where they were banished.
So yeah, well, because it's a kids show, but they weren't trying to buck them off, right? They were actually trying to kill them. I don't know.
Well, they were.
But they banished them anyway.
Yeah, they banished them.
You know, to the farthest reaches.
Yeah.
You know, when I was a kid, they used to talk about if someone was pissed off at the Russian government, they get banished to Siberia. You know, the coldest place on the planet supposedly, and you know where there's supposedly nothing there. You know, so literally that's what they did with Sully and Mike.
Yeah.
They banished them, and then they run into this abominable snowman.
Yeah, who rubs it in knowingly or unknowingly that they were banished. And then after that, Sully comes up with an idea, and then Mike follows along, and they end up back at Monsters, Inc. And that's whenever Water News and Randall and his sidekick are trying to have Boo strapped to the chair, and they're going to extract her screams. And then Sully comes in and breaks that up. And then right as they're fighting, because Randall is fighting, there's another subliminal message that's thrown on the floor, which I can show that. So the initial one, which I don't know, it didn't show up very clearly in the screen the last time. So hopefully you guys can see this photo. This photo was the original one that they showed for much more time than the next photo, because this one is the one that fell on the ground, which was literally the same image, but just Boo's photo there. And the same information, even the same name as this boy here.
So it's the dossier thing,
yes.
the file.
The scare report.
All right. So the scare report, as you recall from the last forum, that is basically a dossier or a file on all the individuals who are on their scare list, which would make you think that would be everyone, especially every child. They never said anything about an age limit, but I would assume they were scaring these children up to a certain age.
Yes, and they have every scare date stamped on there like a library card.
Yeah.
Every date they made a move. Yeah. And on top of it, the only thing they changed for the second subliminal image was that Boo got a dog, and dogs, animals sometimes can see the other side way better than people can.
Now, was that part with the dog, was it a warning sign or something like that?
Yeah, it did. It says warning. It highlighted it that the dog was acquired on December, a certain date.
So it's interesting. It's like they wrote the script with the knowledge that there are animals who can see the other side, which pretty much, I would say, all of them can see the other side. I grew up with animals, and we always had these odd experiences with animals barking at something that you don't see. When I was raising my kids, we had a dog, but we had cats. And the cats primarily were outside cats, except for one that I had before the kids were born, who would be was in the house, an indoor cat. And there were times when the family would go on a little trip out of the state to Delaware or Philadelphia, and I'd be at the house working. And there's a cat that was my cat, name was Bugs, and he would always be around me when I'm in the house. He'd always be in the room. He'd always be hanging out. But as soon as these guys left the house, Bugs wouldn't hang out in the room with me at all. If anything, he would try to come in, and then he would quickly leave. And it took me a little while to realize that there was something would close in and start literally feeding on my energy. That's some of the experiences I basically go to, amongst other experiences and observations of how these other realms work. And animals definitely see the other side. So what they were saying, with this, that they are aware, even in the script, understanding that a lot of, if not all movies, especially those that promote it, are actually promoting the system with subliminal messages and so on and so forth. And again, there's like this, I don't think it's as much as before, where you can't possibly believe in ghosts, even though people were seeing them all the time. But the system keeps saying, if you say this stuff out loud, we're going to ostracize you. So it's this weird insanity here where there are people who are obviously aware of it, and even doing movies, which is sponsored by the system, about ghosts and so on and so forth. It's almost as though you're here to be driven nuts. They say, oh, yeah, this doesn't exist, but here's some movies about the stuff that we're telling you don't exist. So, okay.
Okay, so Chief, the next situation, I'll just describe it, and then you can, if you feel like it, there's programming to be described. So this is the fight between Sully and Randall, and then Mike comes in and has his kind of like self-centered moment where he's just trying to like tell Sully that he still wants to, be a part of Sully's, work or whatever he does. So it's like he can't see it, Randall's invisible at the time.
Mm-hmm. So, there was this, in the movie, there's this thing with Mike, who's very selfish and self-centered, and Scully, who's, is more of a gregarious type of individual, and I would say probably more caring. So Mike comes back after they had their little falling out while they were in Siberia, where the hell they were sent. And he's, was a guy, now Randall was invisible and choking Scully or something like that or whatever. So in one sense you could say, well, he didn't see that Randall was, that Scully was getting choked by Randall. But if he wasn't so into himself, you could see that, Scully was in distress.
Yeah.
But he's more into, going through his ruse of wanting to hang out because of all this superficial stuff, but it had to do with, the only reason he had a name was because of Scully. The reason he had gotten the attention was because of Scully. So he's literally like there because he knows that if he falls out with Scully and they, I guess, get their jobs back or whatever, he would be on the out and he wouldn't have any attention, which is also a feeding thing, So he gets some essence from those who are like, giving a thumbs up to him and Scully, or primarily Scully, but he gets that residual essence from all those people who are admiring them.
Yeah, Sully, Sully's just trying to survive being attacked, and it says here that Mike was trying to tell him, you shouldn't have left me out there. And you talked about when people have to face the illusion of their lives and how, Mike, it's like he had to realize that everything that he had was based on what Sully was doing with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in a way, it's like he was almost as though he felt that maybe Scully didn't realize it, because it was kind of like this denial thing where he's incensed about this and he's bugged about the decisions that Scully had made. I'm forgetting whether he felt that Scully was responsible. Well, I guess he was. Was kind of intimating that, because Scully's the one who took a liking to the little kid, and wanted to, try to get her back home, but also trying to protect her at the same time. And because of him being altruistic or sensitive to this child's situation, he caused problems for Mike. So again, here's Scully. He's the main, he's the main show. He's the one who's got all the juice. He's the star, and so on and so forth. And here's Mike, the kind of like the sidekick guy, and he feels like, well, Scully doing this messes up Mike's thing. So, so Mike is pretending as though he's, that Scully really needs him. They work well together for whatever it is. But again, without Scully, there is no show. So he's going on like, Scully needs him, and how they are we're equals in this team when they're not.
That's why they made another movie to try to bump up Mike's importance, because
Correct.
there was no background to why he felt so special. So then they made another one and tried to back that up.
Yeah, they made a second. That's what the Monsters University or something like that. Yeah. When they had time, to write this. Sorry. To write a script that would make Mike look a little bit better than he did in the first one.
I got some more.
Oh, that's okay. I'm good.
So,
there's. I think we were talking about actually doing an actual formal review of the Matrix at some point.
Yes.
Because the new Matrix that's coming out been brought to my attention, and as we observed the trailer on that, where they literally are trying to say, I believe, for one of the clients, that what Neo experienced in the first Matrix was some kind of illusion or something, which tells you that the first Matrix, I always said the first Matrix got slipped through the cracks, and by the time they realized what was happening, a lot of individuals are being triggered in a certain way, and the realization that this is a matrix, this is a simulation, this is a hologram. And even though they didn't really understand what to do with that information, it changed the mindset of a whole generation of people who watched that movie. So the two movies after, which I clearly could see that they were literally trying to undo the effects of the first movie. So apparently they didn't undo it enough, and now they're coming up with, I guess they finished filming it, because I believe it comes out in December or something. They decided to make this other one right at this very crucial time, where there's all this stuff that's going on in the world that defies what the system says is and or isn't. So with that, I'm going to go back to Monsters Inc. again.
Okay.
I might need water, but that's okay.
I put it down by your right foot.
Okay.
Okay, so there's something interesting, because you know how they made the second movie, Monsters University, in a way to try to bump up Mike's importance, because there's plenty of people who try to ride on the backs of others who don't have any value to that person that they're riding on their shoulders. And in the next movie, they show that Mike did do a lot of work, but there's plenty of people, you've experienced that in your previous relationship, someone riding on your back when you did all the work.
Yeah, or even there were some people that this individual knew who were pretty well known in the jazz field as as a really, and the guy was really great pianist, I have to admit. And we got along just fine. But whenever he had some functions like 50th or 60th birthday bash, we get invited, another party person, because there's always nitwits at parties, even if there's more nice people than not, the nitwits can tend to just, be the turd in a punch bowl. And whenever, whenever I go to these things, there are individuals who are jockeying for position with the guest of honor, this particular professional pianist, as though he was their property. And there's no room for new people to come in and be friends with this person. And my thing, I wasn't really looking for friends. I just got along with this guy. We lived like a block away from one another. Every so often we run into the subway. We run into each other at the subway station in Brooklyn. And we just got along just nicely. So we get invited, and there's these swarms of hangers-on who are like circling, it's like circle the wagons and make sure there's no new people. There's only enough room for us. And they're feeding off of this person, including the guy's wife was just as bad as his, these people were supposedly his friends. So anyway, that's another example of individuals who are hangers-on, almost, I would say with the direct feeding of the person, not a situation where they're going after crumbs. It's like literally directly feeding off this individual. And even if the person's health is going downhill, they would not equate themselves as part of that problem of weakening that individual. So the same within the relationship, if you're the one who's doing all the heavy lifting, another person just has rhetoric. Again, with Mike, he did his part well the way they showed it. He could deliver those chants, timely or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case. There's usually a person who pretends to be supportive, but it's mostly lip service and not much in the line of action. Okay.
And in terms of, with Mike, it's like he gets mad at Sully for wanting to go in a direction that he doesn't want to go in. Because if he didn't leave when he left wherever the abominable snowman was, he wouldn't have made it to remove Boo from the machine.
Yeah, the part where Mike was bugged by Sully's, what Sully's decisions or what Sully decided to do, kind of reminds me of Wreck-It Ralph, Wrecks the Internet, where Mike is literally like Wreck-It Ralph, like Ralph, because in the end, it always had to do with what Mike wanted, So if Mike was able to hold his, carry his own weight, then he wouldn't be all upset about whatever Scully was doing. It's like, you've been designated as the, I guess the donkey or the mule to carry the load, because I'm not strong enough to carry it myself. So I get, again, repeating in a way, I get attention and respect because I am connected to, in other words, Scully.
You did a true logic, Chief, that was, how can you know the depths of someone if you're so into yourself?
Yeah, that goes along with that particular, true logic. That, again, that's a Wreck-It Ralph type of behavior. They're more into themselves than the person that they claim to be their friend or their spouse or partner. Yeah.
Okay. The next situation is Celia. She's like angry because the situation has gone south. This guy that used to be the top part of the Top Scare team is now, he's like a fugitive and everything. She's demanding, you will tell me what's going on, and adding more fuel to the fire of the situation.
More stress. Yeah,
more stress, yeah. And then Mike tells the truth, and at first she didn't believe it. When she was about to go into bitch mode, but then she saw Randall or something like that in the in the tanks and everything, or Randall was chasing them, and then suddenly she's on his side again.
Yeah.
I was like, that's kind of schizo.
Yeah, we covered that and a bit of that in the first form, let's say the first review. Yeah. And the 119th. Mm-hmm. We did that on the women's forum. Yeah. Anyway, in the last forum, I covered the part having to do with the concept of romance, and at the very earlier scenes in the movie, he's sweating bullets on what to get her for her incarceration date, her birthday. And this whole, if I don't get her the right thing, oh my goodness, and so on and so forth. So there's this stress that I talked about that has been added to everything. So including the concept of romance, where they convince people that it's the right thing to do to get into this very stressful mode when it comes to relationship. I mean, it starts out stressful, like presenting yourself in a certain way. And as many of you know who are adults, if you haven't run into anyone who's put themselves out there as something that they're not, you haven't been around that much. So, there's that aspect also. When I was in my teens and guys were trying to chat up women, which was back then it was called what's your rap? You're rapping to a woman, which is basically what's your lie? How are you going to convince this person to think that you're something that you're not? Or the image of when you got a bit older, guys spending all kinds of money to drive around in a sports car but don't have a decent house to live in, or even a place to live in at times. So with that, yeah, we're going to go ahead and go on from there. Well, with her, yeah, going on from there with her. Also, the part where there are certain dudes who are in, guys who are in certain professions where those early years of running after whatever it is or getting your business together takes all of your attention, all of your time, because that's the way the system is. You got to put a lot of energy into whatever it is that you're trying to do, as far as like becoming successful, which they measure in the sense of usually money, So with the tool of money, you can do all these other things. So there are individuals who understand that if I don't have cash, looking at individuals who don't have it, I'd rather not be there. So I'm going to put all this energy into running after, the dollar, establishing my my business, so that I, when the money starts rolling in, then I don't have to work quite as hard as I did in the beginning. And there are individuals who have, these I know personally as well, they have a relationship, or they're also going after a relationship at the same time. It's pretty much the same way with women who are trying to build up a business, and they decide, for some reason, something, Pigeon starts talking in their ear saying, wouldn't it be nice to have a relationship? Right at this very crucial moment when you are trying to build your thing. So wouldn't it be nice to bring in some foreign entity who's, I would say, who's not on the same page with you? They have their own agenda. So whether it's male or female, this guy has his own agenda, and you're going to, bring him in. In most cases out there, as I said, most people are Wreck-It Ralphs. They're coming in with their own agenda into this so-called union that you're trying to put together. So the same with a number of men who I know have known personally in the past. They're trying to get something together. They, either someone looks like, oh, he has some possibilities, and she flashes her eyes at him and so on and so forth, and cute enough to where he decides, oh, okay, I could have this relationship. But she comes in and then starts bugging him about not giving her enough attention. And the same thing again, man will come in and this woman's trying to do her thing, and she's not giving him enough attention, and so on. And so if they fall for giving that person the attention that this person wants, they end up literally not getting thrown off of their trajectory, and sometimes end up going into working in an environment that they weren't, they're trying to stay away from, because they end up in the situation, decide to get married or whatever, or whether or not to get married, but a kid comes along, and next thing you know, there's this quagmire, and he's working for someone else instead of working for himself like he wanted to in the beginning. He loses his job, and my goodness, the browbeating from the partner. So she's looking at him, and now she's accusing him of being a loser and so on and so forth, without realizing that she's, well, it's up to us whether we fall for the ruse or not. But so many are unaware, and the system is always talking about getting married and having children and all of that. And I've mentioned it before, I would never have another kid ever in this world. It's a pain in the fucking ass, excuse my language. So even those who have them and say, oh my darling child, count the number of times that you kind of like, why the hell did I do this? So anyway, with that, even when it comes into relationships as a younger person, and fortunately my grandma unit was really pretty hip. She told me, oh, you don't need to, in your early 20s, don't get no relationship, no serious relationship now. She said, play the field. Get yourself 3 or 4 girlfriends. So if one gives you trouble, you go to the other one. And that was my grandma. So, and I realized that she really cared for me, that she would tell me this stuff. And I could never get any information like that from the mother unit. So anyway, all that to say, before I digress into something else, that what I saw in that particular scene was something like that, where she was interested in Mike because of Mike's connection to Scully, and then Mike was a little star, even if it's like, Scully's Batman, but Mike is Robin, So at least she's kind of like rubbing elbows with the popular people. And when all of a sudden it looks like their whole thing is collapsing, then she doesn't want to have anything, she's just pissed off. Because I had plans, man. I was going to ride your coattail and feast on you, you know. But now you've lost your position. Now you're, you know, it looks like you're going to be a nothing. I'm so really angry. And then we seen where she actually sees what Mike is saying is true about Scully, and you know, and
Randall.
yeah, and he's in Scully. And,
Randall's chasing.
oh yeah, about Randall. Sorry, about Randall chasing them and trying to bump them off or whatever the hell Randall was trying to do.
So the next scene, Chief, is the roller coaster scene. I'm going to show an image,
Okay.
just so that they can see if I can get it on the screen. So right here we have Sully and Mike, and they're riding this roller coaster. And you think, oh, fun, roller coaster, or maybe you don't, like me. Density loves not only the roller coaster, you know, theme parks and all that get essence, but the way they run movies is always like, oh, look, they're gonna get help from Water News, and oh, they got banished. And then, oh, Mike got there, Sully got there just in the nick of time to help Boo, but oh, Randall's still coming, you know, it's like that roller coaster.
Oh yeah, the ups and downs. So they feast off of that, where you know, looks like, oh, it's going to be, you know, everything's going to be okay. Oh no, it's not going to be okay. So you're, you know, every time it looks like things are going to get be good, you fill up those coffers a little bit, and it starts to rise, and then they hit you with, oh man, it doesn't look like they're going to make it, and then, so it's another essence feeding type of deal, and they do feed essence through movies, through media, and even through everything actually. So we have music as well. It's like music that will telegraph an intense scene before the intense scene happens. You know.
May I, I'll say something to you, please
Sure.
correct it, and I'm going to show the image again. So, like, as you can see here, there's all these, there's all this, like, type of lines railways that go to different places. So, density is, they're like gangs, so they feed in different areas. You know, like you were talking about how the witching hour in different parts of the world.
Planet, yeah.
And so they're different feeding times. And they even show these rails that go off to different places with different doors that turn in different directions, going to their different segments of the world.
Well, even when that scene where they were banished and they were with the abominable snowman, say that 3 times real fast. There was a certain time when the sun set, so they had they had it planned out. So when darkness hits, things will start to creep out. And this is just from personal experience. You know, when living up in upstate New York, but again, you run into that anywhere on the planet. But as soon as the sun would start to go down, like a civilian unit who sees a lot more of what's on the other side than most people, even though that's starting to change. We're getting more people seeing the things that she used to see on the regular. You sit out on the deck at the house, the sun starts to go down, there's a wooded area near the house, and she'd sit there with my daughter, and then at a certain point she says, I think it's time to go back into the house. And the daughter was like, what's going on? She says, no, let's just go back into the house. And she finally told us that because as soon as the sun started to go down, it started to get dark, she would start to see these shadows moving out of the woods, heading towards the house. And she didn't want to be out there while they're hovering around her, and trying to feed essence off of her, and either of the kids, the daughter or even the son. So so they start feeding even before the witching hour. But the witching hour is like, it's almost like the main show starts during the witching hour. And if you've seen any of the really, what most people would consider creepy stuff that's online these days, some of the videos that people take with their CCTVs in their house, and some will walk around with an actual video camera or their phone videoing things. But a lot of the things they're getting now has to do with these security cameras in their houses picking up things that are going on. And some of the stuff is looks so real, like it's a Hollywood production or something that we're like, I don't know, but then I have to go through the process of muscle testing and find out that there's a lot of these things because of the collapsing of dimensions and so on and so forth that are in these other dimensions are being seen more and more and more. There's a lot more poltergeist type of things going on, when in the past it was believed that for a spirit or whatever to move things around in the house, it needed to gain a certain amount of essence in order to do that. I feel these days it's like this desperation for essence, so that they'll just push with everything they have to get the essence out of whoever is observing whatever's going on. And even if a person is reviewing a video, I would hazard a guess that there's something nearby, or even their own attachments, mind you, because we never had a clearing. They're walking around with attachments, things that feed off their essence. So the things that are on their attachments, yeah, watch the scary movie, or better yet, watch the CCTV and see what we're doing in your house. And of course, people get creeped out and they pump out that essence. So I feel like I might be getting off the track here.
No problem. We can jump back.
Okay.
So the next scene is where they're trying to get Boo to laugh, to light up all the doors, because they can't go into the doors without energy.
But how do they find out that her laugh would
Because they, in the earlier scenes, whenever they first took her home from whenever there was the fiasco at the sushi restaurant, they ended up making her cry at first, but then Mike did something, which he does here, that kind of humor where he hurts himself, and then she laughs, and then it lit up the electricity so much that it blew the light bulbs out. So that's when they wanted to try to get her to laugh this time. And again, he has to hurt himself, which is a weird training for humor.
Yeah, it's training for kids,
Yeah.
Because, I raise kids and then you're around a bunch of little kids. And there are kids who think it's funny, to hit you in the head with a plate or something. And not just a plastic plate, I'm talking about like porcelain. And, so I would also say that probably has something to do with that little being, what he was or she was before they were born into this particular expression, that there were little somethings before in other past expressions, where they come in and there's these kids who just think that it's just the most hilarious thing to hit you with something hard. I remember as a kid, this was like coming up like a flash, really interesting. I hadn't thought about this in decades. I was maybe around 10 or something like that, and the little brother who was 6 years younger than me, he had this little friend that would come over and play. We lived down the street, and I remember we were doing something, hide and go seek or something, and I'm hiding behind something, and this little kid comes up, and I don't know where he gets a hammer, an actual modified hammer, and hits me right in the spine with his hammer. And he's laughing, and I'm on the ground going, grab, what's this kid's name? Hanky or something. It was a weird name or nickname the kid said, grab Hanky, because he's coming in for another blow, And it's like a little, I think he was younger than that, because these guys were like toddlers. They were a couple years from actually going to school. So the kid could have been like about 3 years old, and didn't think anything of it. I remember they were training children into, if you weren't like that, with the Three Stooges when I was a kid. And after a number of years, they had to put a disclaimer to tell kids, don't try this at home. And any of you who've seen the Three Stooges, I don't have to explain to you what they were doing in those shows. So anyway, we can
jump back.
Yeah, we can jump back.
So,
question.
Yes, go ahead.
This is Sire. So dark humor is another form of like programming, or is that stuff that we find is funny that we actually have to heal from?
It is a programming, and it definitely is something that you have to really look at and realize that if someone is not having a good time in that situation, it's dense. So if everyone else is enjoying themselves at the expense of someone else's pain, that's extremely dense.
Okay, yeah, because on TikTok, a lot of videos go viral, and it's based off of like dark humor or something that someone's personally went through that they find humor in. Is that's just like a bad way of dealing with trauma?
The viewer's trauma, or?
Just the fact that a lot of TikToks that are based off of like dark humor go viral.
Yeah, because it tells you that the masses have been programmed to believe that negative behavior is funny. You know, it goes along with the concepts of revenge even, where, you know, someone does something, even if you don't know who did it, they want someone to pay. So it goes hand in hand with that type of thing, where, you know, throughout history, there have been situations where someone has done something to some person who, and they decide that that person represents a group, but in essence, it's all has to do with the feeding of essence, and that essence going to the system. And when I say system, it is primarily those who are extremely connected, but primarily those on the in the other dimensions, which I'm mentioning, the collapse of dimensions, and you're starting to see, people are starting to see these other individuals that they were told don't exist. But again, what you're saying that, it always reminds me of like, you know, when I did Wreck-It Ralph review, and I said the majority of the people are Wreck-It Ralph. It's like you know, a lack of caring that this person hurt themselves. Now, on the other hand, when I was a kid, you know, ever so often you have an accident, which I don't believe in accidents these days, where you would fall in a really funny way. And there was a bunch of us, you know, kids in the family. So we would just look and, you know, and we like that and see if there's any help needed. But if you got up, you know, and we just said, wow, you really look funny. And if I laughed or other siblings laughed, then we would laugh together because we would see the humor in it, but we didn't really hurt ourselves. But it looked like something that where you could hurt yourself, and our natural inclination was, you know, concerned as to whether that person is hurting themselves. They say it looks weird, but also it might have been an uncomfortable laughing if the person, because I had done that when I was a kid too, you know, and when I worked with my father, all kinds of weird stuff had happened where, you know, I can't even explain, some were just really goofy type of almost pratfalls, which obviously meant someone kind of set me up on the other side. But I would get up and I'd be by myself, and I would just catch myself doing some fall and roll thing, and I would just laugh at the situation myself. But it wasn't because I hurt myself. It's just like, this is ridiculous. But I didn't hurt myself. I didn't, you know, it wasn't any injury. But when people get injured and people are laughing, and I talked about the Three Stooges, this started like a long time ago. The laughing at the pain of others. Or what they used to do in certain you know, countries, including the United States, over 100 years ago, where they would have public executions and people would come to see it.
Get their picture taken.
Yeah, get their picture taken, all kinds of awful things that people have done. So, you know, TikTok is just residuals of what's been going on in the type of programming that's been going on in the world for hundreds of years. To be able, you know, for me personally, you know, like when in my 20s, to see someone get decapitated, I don't want to see that. Even then, I just, you know, no way in the world. I was in a situation where I was in Midtown Manhattan, you know, decades ago, and down there for business, and there's a traffic as you know, stopped, and this little woman, you know, she's all cute and everything, in her 20s, little office girl, you know, looking all sharp and everything, and she's you know, doing that little tip running across the street, but she's got those high heels on, those torture shoes on, and a cab was like speeding, and like right out of the left, you know, the corner of my eye, this guy's coming, and she's there, and there's a screeching. Next thing I know, my hands like this. And a number of people who were standing on the sidewalk doing it. And this thing just came inches to like wiping her out. The guy managed to stop just inches away from her. You know? So to me, that's a natural reaction. You know? Other than, you know, you might gasp at first and someone gasp and then they go, ooh, you know. If I saw someone injured in such a way, If I can't help and they're already helped, I don't want to hang around and see the blood. So I hope that, does that answer anything?
Yes, that did. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, continue?
Yes.
Okay,
Continue.
so the next concept.
And thank you for the question.
Yes,
Really
thank
good.
you. Sorry.
Really
Okay. Thank you. There's the concept of how they, Sully and Mike, they work for the other side, you'd say, Chief, I guess. And then Boo is supposedly a person.
Right.
And they use her energy to turn the doors on. And you said something always really interesting that had to do with the density uses your energy to scare you. So they literally used the child's energy to power all these children's energy, all these people's energy, their own energy to like send them flying or pull them off the bed or, all those things that you can see on the internet.
Yeah, it's really interesting things, about actually people being physically accosted by something on the other side. There's some of the stuff, you gotta be careful, some of the stuff is just straight out fake. But they throw the fake stuff in there to try to diffuse the real stuff of what's really going on in this world right now. And I don't know how they're gonna keep it up because the real stuff is getting more and more and more and more these days. Back in the, I would say even 10 to 20 years ago, if someone saw a craft in the sky that they couldn't figure out what it was, then, someone would make these fake, CGI, videos and then just, kind of flood, YouTube or whatever with those. And so that the system can say, oh, see, it's proven that this is a fake, but turn a blind eye to the stuff that they can't explain away. And of course, what happened this year, they kind of like with head in hand, as though someone put a gun to their head and said, you're going to tell these folks that this stuff is real, or your brains are going to get splattered across the wall over here. Because, some of these guys, they're literally looking depressed, or their eyes are all watery, while they're actually, admitting that these things that I knew was going on since I was a freaking kid. Then all of a sudden, say, okay, yeah. We're lying. There's another true logic that has to do with, believing a perpetual liar is akin to insanity. And I target certain things that are going on and certain things that people are doing as far as having to do with inoculations and believing a system that has known to be, just perpetual liars. All they do is lie. And this is when I became aware when I was in my teens and asking questions, why do they, and then, older folks, no, the government lies about all kinds of stuff. Only people with blinders on will believe that the government is their friend, or maybe they got a lucrative contract. Hey, they're cool with me, go out and, slaughter children, but I'm making money. So if someone, a number of people feel like they're benefiting, a lot of times they're involved in the system themselves. And all they need to do is throw some money at most people and they'll act like little bitches and lap it up and, and do anything. So I kind of veered off what I was going to say, but we'll get back on track because I'm trying to figure out exactly where did I start with that.
Well, we were just you were talking about how in some cases when people watch these videos about recordings of like ghost activity and et cetera, paranormal things, that there are true stories and there are fake stories. But on the bottom line is to watch out for entities using your energy to scare you. I mean, sometimes they have their own reserves, you've said, but a lot of times they use your own energy to scare you.
Yeah, well, in order to move around, they have to have a certain amount of reserves. Reserves is like a video game. And that has been coming up more and more, I noticed, and I would say on the internet, really, or in media, where they're talking about things feeding off of other people's energy. Now, there is some awareness of that before with some people, but not to a real extent. They didn't really understand exactly how it works, but I understand how it works. That, and this is pre-video games. games, because video games haven't been around all that long, but pre-video games, where they convince someone that, that this person is so scary and so powerful. So they dress him up in the red and horns and the tail, and, and he uses a really gruff, and he comes in, and they don't know, in a number of cases, that they got more juice than this thing. But because they've been trained to be afraid of certain images, your program is to open up your cache of energy and throw it at this, whatever it is that's growling at you, in hopes that it will leave you alone. Or you just knee-jerk reaction, just open up, and you might as well lay prone, waiting for whatever it is to come and cut you open, or whatever you're afraid that's going to do. But in reality, it doesn't have well, I can say for everyone, because there are people who give so much of their energy that they're not walking around with that much juice themselves, because whatever feels like they can feed off of that person, your coffers have so much energy in it, but then there's basin that I talked about before, where it collects so that density can feed. Density is going to make sure a lot of times that the levels are so low that you don't feel energetic enough to actually go against whatever it is that's feeding on. So there's like people who are under siege all the time, in the sense where you're at a job where they're just on you constantly. That's a draining process. So I've been 9 to 5s. I've worked a total of maybe 2 9 to 5s my whole life. And one of the things I found with other people who were on those 9 to 5s, there were always these people who were afraid of losing their jobs. And sometimes it had to do with them falling into the trap of having a family before they were financially prepared, or a kid popped out because they were busy having fun, and then all of a sudden the kid's there and they feel responsible. So, they end up spending all this time just, to pay bills, or to feed the kid and all of this. So they're afraid of losing their jobs. And a number of people were single that I knew when I worked in some of these places. And supervisors were like these guys that you see in these movies where the slave ships, and these guys are rowing, and the manager was akin to the guy who walked around the whip and hit everyone on their backs and tell them, row faster, row faster. So a lot of these guys who were in these 9 to 5s were literally the slaves pulling, and the supervisors who used to be slaves pulling, or some just came from another company and they said, this guy's a really good slave driver, let's hire him or her. And literally, those individuals who are rowing have so little energy that they can't even think straight. They can't even think that maybe someone's feeding on my essence. Because of course, the system doesn't want anyone to know anything like that. They don't talk about them feeding on your essence, governments feeding on your essence, companies, corporations, entertainment feeding on your essence. Somebody's getting their piece of the action by anything literally that goes on this planet. So I know there's something else that I wanted to add to that, but this kind of went out the window for a moment. So we can just move on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we're talking about the roller coaster of essence again. Essence, removal, because there's a door falling and they have to get into the door before it crashes on the ground and breaks the door, and then Sully almost falls, and so you get all this tension. And I remember sometimes I'd watch these movies and I'd feel like tired after all that roller coaster, because
because you're feeding something.
Yeah.
You think that, oh, this movie it's in, I'm just sitting in my living room just watching this movie. How's someone feeding from that? You don't know how the system works. You're in a dense grid. They feed from everywhere. They can get you to pump out that essence. You can be sitting there all by yourself in your DVDs watching a movie, and at the finish you go, boy, that sure was, I think I need a nap. Because they feed through. It's like having I should say, a line connected to every video, every movie theater, even the fact that it seems like, okay, this would have to be very etheric for someone to be able to, feed from my essence, feed on my essence, because the real world is very etheric. So something's feeding from it, even if you're sitting there and you're just sitting with your attachments. They're feeding from the rise and the fall, the rise and the fall, and the rise and the fall. So not only does this, the system and attachments are part of the system. So not only the system external, but also the attachments internal are feeding off of this rise and fall, rise and fall, rise and fall. So even when you rest, it's just like, oh, I feel better because your basins is being filled up, and that's when you feel more energy is when your basin is filled, what I call the basin, where you get the drip of your storehouse of essence. And as I've talked about, as I mentioned before, that the storehouse it never literally recoups itself over lifetimes and so on and so forth. So every lifetime, it gets lower and lower and lower and lower until there's no more essence, and then you're like a crumpled juice box thrown on the pile. Okay.
Thank you. So after that, there's like more tension because like Randall has Boo, and then they end up in a door, and then Sully is hanging by just one hand, with his fingers. They love that. They love that scene in like every freaking movie.
Yeah, well, there was some scenes also they like time scenes that have to do with the time is ticking out. Also, I don't think they have it in this with the time ticking out. I don't know if they had a situation where she didn't get back home or something like that. I don't think there was the time.
Maybe a little bit before the parents wake up.
Yeah, but that's another way that they feed essence also, had to do with time limits. Or someone has to defuse a bomb and they have like 10 seconds in which to do it. And then they tick it all the way down to the last second. Every so often they'll switch it up and they'll defuse a bomb 2 seconds before it's supposed to go off.
They had a little bit of time element because Sully was, he was in the icy vanished area, and he's like, oh, what time is it? Oh, this is the time whenever the doors will open. Mm-hmm. So they rush down to the city because they have to make it in time.
Then they did introduce a bit of the time stress issue in the movie as well. And yeah, exactly in that particular scene where he had to get in within a certain window of time, I believe, in order for him to get back in time to save Boo.
Witching hour, yeah.
Yeah, Brandon, what's the witching hour?
Yes, the witching hour.
Yeah.
And Chief, you were talking about how the time is an illusion, and because it's the base, the whole goal of it is to create the essence of stress.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, well, again, everything is about feeding in this realm. The whole idea that there's altruism here, there are people who try to be altruistic, but it's very, very difficult. And there's not that many people. And if very few people become social or public figures, where people are really, really, can just have access to whatever this individual is doing, who is altruistic. Because the system is not interested in altruism, but they're interested in fake altruism. So where it looks like someone's doing something really good, but you're sitting there in your living room and all you see is what they're feeding you. You don't see that there's this whole game behind this person that they're parading around as, some lofty, kind, and generous individual. And throughout, I would say, the time that I've been experiencing this expression, there's way too many stories where they find out some years later that someone that they're parading around as this, angel or whatever, which I don't really like if people throw that angel crap out there. There are other cultures that say, I don't think you want to see an angel because in our culture, angels are demons.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, that's them, that's their cat. So it depends on, what culture is to what's good and what's bad and so on and so forth. But where was it?
Okay. So go to the next scene or?
I wanted to actually I think there was a little bit more that I wanted to clarify with that. But, usually when I start, it's just like, I just take off. But we can just go back. Again, some of the stuff will come up and we're having, future forums anyway. So if there's something that I think that I wanted to add to, I will add it in one of the future forums.
Okay. So now Boo is like fed up and like, I'm gonna get this Randall guy, and starts jumping on his head and pulling his antennas and then like, cause she's losing her lack of fear, I guess probably by watching, the others fighting Randall. So then she starts doing her bit, and you were saying that when density feels that you're not afraid of them, they know that they don't have the advantage. And a lot of times you'll see these ghosts, they'll leave. Because like people who, they're afraid of the ghost when they see it, but when they actually just challenge it and go to the door and open it, there's no ghost. It disappears.
Yeah.
They lost the advantage.
Well, there's a number of these current videos that I do double check, and with those I trust as to whether they're legitimate or not, where there's some entity or whatever like creeping around somewhere, and notices that their food can see them. And all of a sudden you can see in the video that they're quite uncomfortable, and sometimes they'll run away or they'll duck behind something. Because if people are seeing these, I think I might have mentioned in the last forum, if individuals are seeing these things enough, eventually you start to get used to seeing them. So part of the consciousness gets used to things if it's presented enough times. It gets used to things. And so what the system does, it tries to fight against you getting used to things. They'll have their scenario going on, but your scenario having to do with the honesty of your own consciousness. I mean, your higher consciousness, not these series of NCs and attachments talking in your head. But when you can tap into your higher consciousness, it literally tells you what the truth is about your existence. So it will say, these things are other consciousness, and they're putting on a performance in order to do things that are not agreed upon by Supreme Consciousness, which is to feed on other consciousness to the point where they make those consciousness, they derail the trajectory of other consciousness just to be in this realm. Everyone here, just about, I would say, your trajectory has been derailed. Here is not where you're supposed to be as a consciousness. This is something contrived. It's like a trap, you might as well say. And the trap works through psychology, because you have to get someone to believe that they're weak in order for them to behave like a weak thing. So I know there's a little bit more I can go on with that. But with Boo, it was looking at it from a Neo Shamanic point of view, my Neo Shamanic point of view, that she was watching, she got used to the monster. She got used to Sully, because Sully acted like a nice guy. Even though he's supposed to be all scary and everything, if you were to say they were real, I would say her consciousness recognized this consciousness as something other than the image that they were showing. That his consciousness was a friendly consciousness to her consciousness. So after a while, and I know there was a bit where she was afraid of him, where he was doing this, was it a class or something like that, where she gets all scared of him.
Yeah.
And they want him to, as the top scarer, to show these novices who are trying to learn how to be top scarers, how to do it. And the guy won't let him go, so he said, okay, so I can get away from this, and then the little kid goes, and then he has to convince her that, look, I'm really not a bad guy. I'm really not. And I don't know how long it took for her to actually get over it. But anyway, the scene that you're talking about, by that time she's gotten over it, she realizes that he's cool just from how he behaved. And that was very logical. It's like, people can talk about how cool or how good or how nice they are, but what it's telling is what they do.
And you said to watch out for trickery, because the whole program of save the woman and she'll like you, because he came in and saved her. And that's a program, where people try to help you or whatever, so-called help, but they're actually feeding on you or trying to be
Yeah, well, that's, when people fall for it, it's like something that all of a sudden somebody comes in, hi, how are you, and does something really nice, but it has to be a consistency. So strangers being nice to you, always have your guard up. They may be an actual nice person, rarely. In most cases, they're not that nice. Or somehow they're setting you up to feed on you in one way or another. Sometimes individuals do things for you and then they want, you to reciprocate, but not when it's comfortable for yourself, when they want you to reciprocate. We talk about gifts with strings attached, that type of, goes in the same category as that. So yeah, it does have to do with how a person behaves, but I know stories of individuals who put on an act for at least 5 years, which is wow. That's quite a professional performer there. But after the 5 years, and they feel they got this person tuned up, he got them in a position where, they are extremely vulnerable because they totally trust this individual, then they yank that rug. So for me, it's not to walk around being paranoid. I don't believe in being paranoid. Realize, one, that you have a certain amount of energy. If someone's trying to intimidate you, then they're trying to convince you to open yourself up and give that essence. So one of the things I learned when I was in New York City is that you don't show much in the line of emotion, especially on the street. I'm not talking about business, it's different. You go into the office and so on and so forth, and you're going to be gregarious because it's about business. But in social situations or just out in the general public, you have to be pretty much, you can't just like telegraph your feelings out there because there's too many wolves out there, waiting to pounce. So I learned how to just keep pretty much a poker face. And on rare occasions, if someone's trying to make me laugh, my poker face, you have to break through my poker face to get me to laugh out in public. Unless you're with somebody that I know, then we can have our little, little yucks or whatever. But when it came to strangers, it was always like, poker face. And sometimes folks would walk up in the street, which was something that was pretty common when I was living there. And someone kind of, hey, how you doing? And they go, what do you want? Was usually the response. It didn't take me long to get that response myself. So, yeah, okay. I got, what do you want? And you would find that, oh, this guy's, he's a hard one. Never mind, and they move on. So anyway, we're gonna move on.
Okay, sure. So Sully ends up finding Mike finds a door that's to the bayou, and then they just throw Randall into that door finally when they get rid of him. And then they break the door, but that only traps Randall for so long because he can find another door to get back in.
Yeah, because he's pretty, slippery. So.
Okay, so they're near the completion, I guess, of getting Boo back to where she needs to go, but
Well, I think they do this number having to do with missing people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because let me know if I'm on the right part.
Well, this part is where Waternoose is trying to frame Sully and Mike as soon as they get back.
Okay, so I'm jumping the gun.
Oh, I mean, if you'd like to go there.
No. Let's keep it in. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's trying to frame them, and that's another stress, roller coaster because they just got rid of, Randall, but now they have to face Waternoose again.
Yeah. Which is again, it's like one of those deals where individuals run into. They used to say you can't beat City Hall when I was a kid. And I think maybe it evolved to, you can't beat the government or something. Because a lot of rules that they had as their laws back when I was a kid, they changed all that stuff to where, supposedly, protection from the government in certain ways, there are checks and balances and all that business. Religions are separate from the government, therefore the government has no say-so in what people do in their religious beliefs and so on and so forth. That's like the Mormons who have polygamy as part of their their belief, where these guys can have as many wives, I guess, as they can afford to have, and so on and so forth. The government has nothing to say about that, which obviously is true because the practice goes on. I think when it comes to actually sacrificing people in the sense of killing individuals as sacrifices. They're supposedly not introduced, that's supposed to be illegal. Really only the government's allowed to do stuff like that. But they'll point out, Satanists and so on and so forth, having to do with, sacrifice. And I can get into a whole thing having to do with Satanism and the system and so on and so forth, but that's not where where I want to go right now.
Okay, should I continue?
Yeah, you can go.
Okay, so Mike and Sully hatch a plan really quickly. Mike runs off with a fake version of Boo, and Sully runs off with a door. So you get that. Then Sully, as he's running off with the door, he trips over some cans, and that gives essence.
Yeah, another one.
To density.
He's getting away. Hi. He made a lot of noise, and now we know where he is. Though,
Yes. And they even have the pounding of water noose's little big crab feet.
Yeah, right.
Boom, 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 boom. I'm like, oh my gosh, sometimes it makes you can feel it in your chest. Sometimes.
Well, it's like that programming also. It has to do with sound as well.
Yeah, sound.
Certain types of sounds.
That's what ghosts and entities do to try to scare people. If they can just make noise, they don't have to show themselves.
Well, what was that thing we experienced last week with a dog on the roof? I forgot how the hell it got up there.
Yeah, and it was
at night.
Yeah, at night. Right, it couldn't be in the day.
Yeah, it couldn't be in the day to go out and actually see it. So we had to sit in here and just figure out what the hell was running around on the roof. Mm-hmm. This was last week, mind you. So talking about weird stuff going on.
Bigger than a bird.
And as they said, that dog would have to be able to climb trees in order to get up on that roof.
It's so strange.
Yeah. So we've had weirder things happen, but these guys are just getting blatant, right now because it's closing in. Things are closing in on them. And as you can hear from this face virgin, that they know, and this is like, the shoes on the other foot. So when I say certain things, I scare the crap out of them. And they find they can't scare me. So, but I'm cautious. So we're going to go out and just but Mrs.A was like, yeah, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to check it out while I, give snacks to the pets. It's, not necessary. You don't have to prove how tough you are. We'll just play it cool and we'll see what happens. And I did get information that it would be gone in the morning, and it was. But it took a while because you can tell dogs, toenails running across things, and the weight of the thing was definitely larger than I thought it might have been a monkey at first.
Yeah, it had a tail and everything. It was just.
Well, you could tell that it had that however it walked that it had a tail or something or whatever. You can ask Mrs.A how she has that superpower to figure out.
No, because you could hear it brushing the roof.
So, anyway, see, that's a secret. He's brushing the roof with his tail. So anyway, well, thank you for letting me know that's how you know.
Okay.
But anyhow, all that to say that they use sound also. So how's the kid know to be afraid of something? They introduce it, sound with the visual. And the reaction of the victim if it's a movie or something like that. Because, a little kid will look, like when my daughter was really little, she thought spiders were really cute and grub worms were really cute, and she'd pick them up in a heartbeat. I said, well, that's not a wolf spider, so fine. You can hold that for a moment and then put it back where you got it. Or little grub worms, some people are like, ooh, but not little. Some of these things were kind of big. Because it was always, at the time, growing up, they were growing up upstate and they had the property, and I was always putting stuff in, planting trees or whatever. And you would find stuff. And she'd come, and after a while, we said, oh, here's something that I don't want to touch, but no, it's not poisonous or whatever. And you call her, and she'd come, oh, cute, and pick it up and run off with it. So I never tried to get her to be afraid of things. This was something that shouldn't be touched. I said, you don't want to touch that, and don't touch it. Now, don't touch it, And then I would explain, those things are not poisonous. These things are poisonous, or they'll bite, and sometimes if it's not poisonous, you let it think certain things bite, which she didn't get. It was funny, nature liked her. She never really got bit except for by, I think, a caterpillar.
Caterpillar.
Of all things, all the stuff she held was a caterpillar. But all that to say that, again, it has to do with programming someone as a child, usually, generally, to be afraid of certain things. So the sound of water nooses, crab feet, coupled with water nooses a bad guy, you're sitting there and sweat starting to trickle down your arms, from under your arms, and you don't even realize it. Sometimes you're watching stuff, and then after it's over, you're just like, geez, that you sweated because they were effectively feeding off of your essence. Okay.
So, okay. The next thing Water News says is interesting, which is something that you find everywhere, which is you seen too much. And it's a mantra that they share everywhere.
Yeah, because they want you to look the other way. And they, again, they want you to think that these institutions are so powerful that they could bump you off in a heartbeat. But even with all of those systems collected together, there's not as many of them as there are the food running around on the planet. So there really is no need to be afraid. But even if you're a senior individual, understanding that transition is not final. That's why they like that argument, is there life after death and all this other kind of business. Because they want you to feel like this is all there is. And then they have all these little memes about, live life to the fullest because you only have one life and all of this. I was just thinking there are certain movies and things like that, but they have it just interlaced, throughout everything. If you pay attention, you get into your Shamanic mind of what I'm talking about, you will observe everything you look at in a Shamanic way. Then you will start to see, be able to put together. Some people are better at putting together puzzles than others, but practice, practice, you get better. Where you will start to see the holes in everything. Even the holes in your fears. And understanding how your fears were nurtured to be where they are.
You have a true logic, Chief, that says the first stage to enlightenment is the realization that the journey never ends.
Yeah.
Because people's fears based on their feeling that they are, they can die.
Yeah, that there's this, this one finite aspect to their existence, this one lifetime, and then, you're gone, and then what? So if people say, well, then what? I say, they're not really buying it because way back when, if you read any of the stuff, centuries ago, individuals would bump themselves off because their lives sucked. And there's some aspect of their higher consciousness that was still aware enough to say, we don't have to stay here and suffer through this. And so they would take themselves out. People still do it to this day, but back then it was more individuals who were interested in, were, I guess to say, more prone to just use that as an exit, saying, being dead is better than being in a concentration camp, being, tortured and beaten, tormented, and starved, 24/7. So then they introduce, purgatory, hell, all these, limbo, all these places, and tell you that you'll go there. And when I was a kid, the churches didn't like me, so, which is cool, I didn't mind. And I ended up in churches because of relatives, units. And so I would ask questions like, well, Pastor, have you ever been to hell? And, they would just have the oddest, because I was a kid asking these questions, they'd have the oddest expression. And more or less their expression was like, hey, go away, kid, you're bothering me. There's no answer. Just, why do you bring this thing to my church? Get him out of here. He's asking too many questions. So, how do you know if there's a hell? And I don't care about some little kid or somebody who, said that they died and they saw the tunnel of light and their relatives were hanging around. I was like, well, then that means life after death, wouldn't it? Why would they just want to hang around, or maybe they're like what that movie Coco,
Yes, Coco,
where they got their own little, ghost community, or I guess it's a skeleton community going on the other side and all of that stuff. This is all just some muddy waters. That there is reincarnation, that the consciousness is eternal for the most part, is eternal for the most part, and that you go from one expression to the next. For me, I look at this particular expression as it's like a challenge to see how far I can go with the information that I'm gleaning. That's for me personally. A lot of individuals they're just a walking dead. They're like zombies walking around and been basically programmed to be such, so that they don't question anything. Except when things like what's going on now, with these guys talking about pandemics and so on and so forth, and all of a sudden it's changing their reality. It's like the system decides to change your reality after telling you that reality is always going to be this way. These are only all the things that are going to happen in this reality, and then all of a sudden they throw you a curve. And individuals who basically have bought into what the system says about what reality is, they say, well, what's this? And then they look to water news for answers. And water news will segue you into the meat grinder with lies. How do you do this and do that? We're here to help you. We care. If you were thinking, we talked about this before, most people don't like each other. And I guarantee you the system really doesn't like you. It's just a thing. Collateral damage. It's just a thing. So if anyone thinks that the system cares about you, they care about you as much as they care about the chicken in the chicken coop to make sure that you're fat enough for them to eat when they want to feed. Or laying eggs. Somebody get something out of your butt. They'll let you hang out, but it's never going to be a nice, easy ride. And even when individuals can make a lot of cash, if you pay attention to that, which I have been for a long time, because I came in looking at things. Even as a little kid, I was looking at the things that interested me, not the things that the system was trying to shove down my throat. And it took me a while to realize that, because where I'm at now, those who did really well in the system can't figure their way out of a paper bag, because the system sets you up to not be able to figure anything out. But they tell you, here's a gold star, man, you really did well. But when something unique happens that doesn't go along with their program, they're like holding their, I don't know what to do. I'm supposed to be a genius. I don't know what to do. So anyway.
Keep going?
Keep going.
So the next thing, of course, so water news is like, get them, they've seen too much. And then, of course, Sully has to reply with the typical reply that doesn't have to be this way. And then after.
Oh, trying to appeal to the evil?
Yeah, to the evil. Like they give a care.
Yeah, water news. Well, that is water news, right? Yeah. Yep. The system. Appeal to the system.
Yes, like it doesn't have to be this way, and all water news is thinking collateral damage.
Yeah.
Or tie up loose ends, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so then the next thing is like the whole something about kidnapping children. I remember they were saying something like it's like a trigger phrase. They say it a lot in the news.
About children. When they're just miniature consciousness, really. They use that, or they used to women and children first. If there's like something, a disaster, get the women and the children out first. So again, that's another program. I would tell you, there are a number of men who are just like, me first, sorry, and out. But even with the system, I would say with children, well, they got a lot of essence to give or whatever. But again, even those type of disastrous things, I would, I don't mind if anyone wanted to challenge me on that. Those are setups by the system. Like the minor, I wouldn't say minor, like, kind of stub your toe thing, but even don't be so surprised if that's not the case, if something happens because you stubbed your toe or something like that, that throws your whole day off or whatever. So minor little bump into the wall is just you navigate it in a certain way, but then again, you never totally know. Yeah.
Sometimes whenever people have sessions, of course, their energy rises, and when their energy is rising, their body adjusts. Sometimes their their dexterity or like the perception of where the wall is, or
Yeah, it can actually, when I was doing sessions in my house, and we're upstairs, we'd have to tell people that, in other words, take your time going down the stairs. Don't try to rush down the stairs. And because a lot of times, because of what I pull out, it disorients them for a while. They have to basically regain their balance after pulling all this density out.
You've had experiences where there was a client who she was obviously mostly controlled by this entity. So when she went up the stairs and you cleared her, then she came down the stairs, she says, I can't even remember going up the stairs.
That's true, yeah. And then those who would have something, an attachment on them, and they weren't really doing the work, and they come back, and it's a different attachment than the one that was there before, and they won't remember what what I did, the session previous, or there are certain items that we were using at the time, and they had used it at least 3 times maybe, and they'll come in and say, hey, is that new? Literally. So when individuals talk about just not remembering, this is I don't know if I'm getting away from it, but when folks talk about why is it that I don't remember anything, from my previous expression, because there's a process where they literally compartmentalize that stuff and remove it from, in other words, from your, I should say, lucid memory. It's still in there, and that's usually what happens when I work on individuals. There are times they start to see other expressions of their lifetimes come up. And if they mean something to this particular lifetime, which they do, because it's literally certain aspects of that experience is allowed to come into this experience because density can feed from it. But there are certain things having to do with where they came from before, or what they experienced before, that little children will remember. And I had that experience with even within myself as a little kid, but with my own kids. And especially the daughter unit, where she was very, very comfortable with things that would just walk into her room from the other side. I was never afraid of them until something decided that they wanted her to be afraid. And, and I might have talked about that incident where the family cat, for whatever reason, was sleeping in a closet and put her to bed, total darkness, be awake, not a peep out of her. All of a sudden, one evening, this is no one's going on. And what the hell? I go open the door, and the cat had fallen asleep, and he's trying to get out. But the fact that how vigorously he was trying to get out meant something was in there that creeped him out. And I felt that that was just something that was going to actually produce this fear in her. And after that, she could never, be in the dark without a nightlight after that point. So I'll get it programmed. So we're talking about, with children, again, children are just consciousness who can be older than you, just in a compact package. And, so they, in other words, they're not going to say this. So they can use, oh, the children, what about the children? Oh, and we get that a lot, someone says, my niece or my nephew or my whatever, What about, oh, you mean that old consciousness in the little package?
He could have been a dictator in his
Yes,
lifetime.
he could have been a total torturer in another lifetime or whatever. But look at the cute little package. It's like looking at kittens and puppies, It's a consciousness. But it's a real hard one for people to actually grasp onto this and look at it. And they know, they always use things that will weaken a person's resolve. Look at them. We're promoting, look at the little kid, look at the little cute smile or whatever. Nobody likes a bad kid, of course. But, there's these little kids who are really pretty good at scamming. So like, oh, I heard, oh, honey, what do you want? Give me some candy. Then kid gets the candy, he gets outside the room, worked again. So anyway, I was to say that I don't have anything against the concept of children, so to speak, but I'm not going to sit here and believe that that kid is something other than a consciousness that's been around before, that could be older than you are. Okay.
Speaking of weakening someone's resolve, because that's what density does in order to feed. In this, as we continue with the movie, Water News plays the blame game on them, and he's like, "It's because of you that no one will have electricity. It's because of you, that everyone will be, have,
Yeah, because they set up a system according to their rules that can only be supported in a certain way. So they will build up something over time that's totally inefficient, but it works in a really janky way. They get some electricity going on and so on and so forth. When in reality, in the universe, there's a lot of really amazing things and ways to just exist that has nothing to do with all this stress. That if the wind blows too hard or something like that, your electricity is going to go out. So what they're saying is like, how dare you even think? And people have tried, when they tried to get more into solar, what did this system do? They made it very difficult to get into solar 20, 30 years ago, because the system wasn't getting the essence that they needed, and some of that had to do with money, but primarily essence that they needed by people having to either just drive cars. The rubber company would lose money if they went into more public transportation in the cities and so on and so forth. So they blocked that stuff, which you can read back if you're curious enough, how the corporations, which is a part of the system, block certain things that would make things much easier in people's lives. So, with him talking about it's because of you, the system won't work and so on and so forth, which is kind of a cute little turn in events where, oh, we don't need to scare the crap out of kids. All they do is need to go in and entertain them, and they'll laugh, and we'll get some essence from that. They'll get the kind of essence that they want from laughing. So that's kind of an interesting little ruse that they had going on. I'm not sure exactly what was the benefits from it, but except that they want you to think that there's some altruism in the world, and there actually are people who want laughter, but not really, because most people are regular owls. And most of them have been programmed to, as we were saying earlier, to think it's funny to see someone hurt themselves, or think it's interesting, I was a boxing fan when I was a kid, but the only reason I was a boxing fan was because as a little kid, I was blown away by Muhammad Ali. He was called Cassius Clay earlier on. I was just blown away by that guy. And so I just followed him. If there's there's a match coming, Merriweather and so on, so I don't want to do it. But, way back when, Muhammad Ali against so I'm there, man. I want to check him out, So because, he was also very very artistic in the way that he thought. He was a thinker, but also he was a really good-looking black man. Mm-hmm. And a little kid, a little black kid is like, oh, that's a good-looking black man. He's really tough. Mm-hmm. It's not like, some of these actors that they had when I was a kid, who the system would always make them look weak. So this guy had something, that defied the system up to a certain point. So again, having to do with, watching violence, it was more of the artistry of his fighting for me than it was like, I want to see him beat somebody bloody. I wanted him to win, of course, but also what he meant socially in America at that time too. There are people out there who were giving him all kinds of money just to see him get beat, and he didn't get beat until they put him in prison because he refused to go over to Vietnam and get fragged or killed, because that's how the system likes to work. Get people who are influential into certain situations where they're no longer influential. So by the time he got out and came back, he was, no longer at the height of his game. So, but anyway, to get off of the, do with Muhammad Ali. I was Mrs.A.
Go ahead.
Where was I? Before I got into that zone. Oh, okay, it had to do with water news and telling these guys that the system was working fine until they got interfered with his plans, and the system was going to go better before they got involved, interfered with his plans. We're going to squeeze as much screams out of these children, to the point, almost like it sound, the attitude of the movie is almost like they're going to just drain these kids and just wring them out till there's nothing left. And that was kind of the feeling I got when I watched it, and that's why these guys were so against what they were wanting to do to not kids, fellow consciousness. So if you look at everyone's the roles, these are fellow consciousness playing these different roles. So this kid is a fellow consciousness as Sully and and Mike and Waternoose. They're all consciousness coming from the same source, but they're so screwed up that they're playing these weird ass games.
And they identify with them.
And they identify with their programming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. There were I don't know. Is it okay if I share this dream? It's like a scary dream.
I'm not sure which one, but you can go ahead.
There was a time, I don't know if you guys have scary dreams or weird dreams, that there was a time where I ended up, like, sometimes you just get thrown into a dream, and I was thrown into this dream where it was in this dark, damp places, and there was like cages, and there was entities in the cages, but they were just shadowy and dark, and they were trying to spook me, and so then I remember something that Chief had taught me, and I was able to say it in the dream, and I was ready to, fight them. And I'm like, I'm consciousness too. Just realizing that they're consciousness that are wearing like a demon costume or wearing a ghost costume or a ghoul costume. They're all just conscious.
Yeah.
So then we'll just continue on.
Yeah.
Because it was, the whole "it's because of you" mantra, it might trigger people's loops about being blamed by maybe their relatives, or it's your fault that Christmas didn't go well because you didn't show up, or et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So then the next thing that happens is the CDA comes in with after Mike and Sully, after Sully sets them up.
Now the CDA is?
The CDA is those guys in yellow who like to shave people's and pour water on them.
Yeah, they get contaminated by like a sock or something in the kid's closet. Yeah, then they would, they had one character, it's like a running gag in the movie, where this guy was always getting a piece of a kid's clothing on him, and kids are poisonous, so you can never touch them or anything that they have. And they, so the one who was helping this particular character would always just like rat him out. And then they said CDA would come in with this very aggressive shave them bald and put one of those collar things on like they put on pets, to keep them scratching themselves. And after a certain number of times, anyway, but I don't want to digress. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, the guy was always saying, "Oh, we're good friends," but he always rats the
guy. Yeah, he kept ratting him out.
Yeah.
And being, that was almost beyond being a Rick-It Ralph, because you can see the guy was totally miserable after what they did, but this guy rat him out again because he was more for the system than his friend.
Totally.
Yeah. So the rules of the system, which was a lie, as you find out near the end of the movie, that the stuff from these kids were not toxic. Or the kid, like when the kid was around, they were all creeped out in the monster world by this little human kid. It's like, it was interesting because they were programmed to be afraid on a certain level, and kids are programmed to be afraid on a certain level.
So Sully and Mike are able to frame Waternoose. So they literally had to put Sully into the Sully and draws Waternoose into this room where it's recorded. So he's able to say, Waternoose says all this incriminating stuff, and then it's recorded, and then it's reported to the CDA, which is Roz, the slimy blossom or something like that Mike calls her. She's this slug kind of entity.
Right.
So this is Then you were
Wow,
talking
what
about,
a-
I know.
Right in front of the house crying.
She's, yeah.
There you go. But-
So, you were talking about, this is like the reminiscing, like, oh, we'll never see each other again, you know, with Boo and Sully. Yeah.
But before we get to that point, the part having to do with, these guys are really trying really hard, with them recording, it reminds me of those movies where some person with, with the protagonist would find out the scam or the scheme that the antagonist was up to. It says, "I'm going to tell the press I have this recording," and he's showing it to them or whatever. It's just the two of them in the room. You know, "I'm going to do these things," or sometimes it'll be the guy, and his henchman, and this guy says, "I'm going to tell," and say, "Oh boy, yeah, you're not going to get out of that room," And they would always have it set up that way, where that person won't get out of the room. But even if he was able to get out of the room, they don't know that maybe the CBD or whatever.
CDA.
CDA is part of the system. It was part of the whole game. So that's one of those goofy things that they're training people into thinking, yeah, I record you, and I take it to the press, and then they're going to, put this out. The number of things that people have taken to the press, and the press won't print it because the press is controlled by the system. So anyway, with that, you're talking about the missing, the whole thing of reminiscing and missing someone, and not being able to move forward in a certain way because I can't visit you anymore or something like that. It goes along with the whole concept of a family in the realm, anything that will keep you from moving forward. So if you are doing something, which I say moving forward is always has to do with something positive. So if you're trying to move forward, do something positive for yourself. Even if by you being allowed without interference to move forward, get you into a place where you have a lot of resources and so on and so forth. A lot of times, I would say someone that has any inkling of balance, if their family units are like cheering them on, say, yeah, well, go ahead and do your thing. Usually that person gets to a certain point and then they turn back and then they reap some of that rewards on those who supported them or who didn't get in their way. But the system has it where, and I have this with a number of clients, where those units will just adamantly, no, because of whatever ego issues, they may have looked down on you or whatever as being the basket case, the loser, the problem person, and so on and so forth. And so, whatever part of you decides that I need to prove to myself that I'm not these things that I'm being told I am, they will get in the way because they feed off of your misery, feed off of making you feel miserable. So that's one reason why you'll find a lot of folks that say, or ego, it's like, how dare you do better than I told you could do? Okay, we can.
You were talking about, Chief, how keeping mementos is not moving forward, and that Sully, he has this piece of the door, of Boo's door, like glued to the back of his clipboard. After they changed the business to being about laughter, humor, and then Mike puts the door back together for to thank Sully, or like as a gift or something like that.
That's just soften Sully up.
Yeah, soften Sully up for feeding, because there's a lot of people there's someone who's usually an asshole to them, but then they do something that's supposedly incredibly nice, but then that person is forever in this loop of, that was the one time that guy was ever nice to me. I'm going to save this memento or something.
Yeah. Or see how good a friend I am. I went out on a limb to do this one thing for you, which is cool, but the returns I expect are a lot more than me putting your door together. So, I mean, that's, me being jaded, but that's how I see those types of setups. Yeah.
So clients submitted questions. So one of the questions is, are there things like zombies and monsters and scary looking things in Supreme Consciousness universe?
No. There's no need to frighten the essence out of anyone, because the Supreme Consciousness Universe is not about feeding off of other consciousness.
You said it was about respect and consideration.
Yeah, respect and consideration. I mean, if you think about it, there's no need for those types of words because there's no disrespect.
So, thank you, Chief. They said, why would so you're saying that people, entities that choose to look this way are strictly doing it for feeding purposes?
They said, oh, look like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They're within this hologram. Also use the term simulation, whatever, the matrix. They're within this hologram, and the hologram is an anomaly. That is literally, and rightfully so, as some others have said long before I ever said it, a prison.
Yes.
That's why, when I talk about birthdays, I call it incarceration days. Because, there's nothing to really celebrate, honestly, except maybe some people feel like, I survived another year, it's time to celebrate. When in reality, I say, oh, I'm still in this shithole.
And Chief, please correct me, but you said that Yin and Yang created ugly. The concept of ugly wasn't, in existence before, because why would they create something that's distasteful or painful or,
Yeah, absolutely. Someone say, well, it's pie in the sky. Oh, that's some fantasy stuff. Oh, look around you today. There's a whole lot of things that one would consider fantasy that's actually become reality. So, no, there's no need for unattractive things. And I know that when I was a kid, we said, you can't have good without evil. And who in the hell said that?
yes.
Who said that? Tell me, point the son of a gun out. Who said that? What makes the system's word more valid than someone who has logic? So they don't like logic because it trumps their crap. They compartmentalize things and they do this, the shell game with the real things mixed in with the fake stuff. And I guarantee you, if you got 3 shells, 2 of them are straight up fake. 1 maybe might be somewhat the truth. So no, there's no need for ugliness. There's no need for someone walking around as a zombie, because this Supreme Consciousness is eternal energy, which means there's plenty for every consciousness in the universe. Even on a smaller scale, when I was growing up, they're talking, oh, the overpopulation of the planet, overpopulation of the planet, overpopulation of the planet. And when I got to the point where I was interested in, reading like encyclopedias, was it the National Geographic, which is interesting. It's a worthwhile magazine, because they'll tell you stuff that goes against what the mainstream is telling you, but they're not doing it to go against it. They're just, that's what they do. They just look at things and they tell you what's going on. And then they show this map of where all the people were. Guess what? There's more open space on the planet than there are where people are. So this whole overpopulation business, that's all another thing, having to tune people up for essence so they can run another ruse on you, run another ruse on you to get you all like, juiced up and ready to feed on. There's no overpopulation, but I would say the thing where it's overpopulated with freaking, Wreck-It Ralphs. That's the only overpopulation I see a problem with Dunia. It's overpopulated with density. So anyway.
Okay, next question from our client is, I've seen in children's books and series about opening doors, or they go on an adventure and they open a door, or they go inside someone's head. And this concept of doors, are they promoting people to open doors in their mind to density, or just opening doors for them?
Well, yeah. Being that the program is thick, with schools and everything else that you learn here, if they want you to open doors, it's going to benefit them. So again, the whole concept of walls in general, there really are no walls, But if you believe it, you create these fake walls. And then whatever's inside of your MCs or whatever will convince you to construct even more walls in your mind. Because of the information that you get that has to do with, compartmentalizing everything. This fits over here, and that fits over there, and this fits, nothing, in other words, no walls, no boxes to touch one another. But when you break all that down, you see that everything is connected to everything. Even things that say, oh, how in the heck, I can't think of anything right off the bat, but I'm quite sure you can, where they say, what does, I don't know, a rainstorm in China have to do with, what's going on in California? Or I use an example of a couple of decades back, there was a major dust storm, which if you check the weather thing, there's all kinds of wild stuff going on that's affecting the whole planet. So I said, well, how could this weather event affect this other, continent on the other side of the planet? And I probably talked about it before. There was a massive sandstorm in China, in the desert in China, and it spanned through the currents because the planet is moving. It ended up in New York State like several days later, and changed the color of the sky and and the sun, the hue of the sun, and everything. So everything is connected. So when they're talking about doors and so on and so forth, like I may use that because that's a form of communicating with people who are not aware yet. That we're opening this door, or we're walking down a hallway in your energetic house, and you want to clear, you want to be cleared, but you have, like in these movies about haunted houses and these old, houses, these, really scary looking places, of course that's a program again too. And they said, yes, you can go anywhere in the house, but never go into that room. That room is locked. Never go into that room. So again, those are ways of programming, so that folks won't even allow themselves to be, totally clear. They have these rooms. Sometimes they're very much aware of it because, they feel that they're trying to impress me in some way. I'm here just to help. I'm not here to judge whatever you've gone through, because that's not that's not Neo Shamanic, man. That's not, Supreme Consciousness concept. Why, you come for help and then I make fun of you. That goes against everything that I'm about. Why am I going to make fun of you, even regardless? I've had people who have some really, treacherous stuff that they've done. If I can help them neutralize that treachery, I would do my best. But even then, I don't belittle them because of it, because they are consciousness who've been damaged. With that said, it's just I don't open myself up to them either, because I know where I'm at. I got my energetic hazmat suit on when I'm dealing with people who have that type of energy. So, we can go to the next.
Last question, and we have 1 minute till.
The end of the forum?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Chief, is this movie programming people or encouraging them to trust and play with densities?
Well, it's a good question. It does seem like, they're saying that, oh, look, see, really evil people. Well, again, Sonny wasn't really an evil character, really. He was a guy that was doing his job. And he was ignorant enough to think that in the beginning, that children were these objects and they were dangerous. You just had to, scare them and get out. Scare them, fill up your coffers, fill up your tank, and get out. So, they're kind of muddying the water, saying, oh, you can play with them. Or I would say you should get from this movie is to not be afraid of those things that supposedly go bump in the night. In one of the videos that you were looking at with the guy that had all this noise going on in this room at night or something like that, and then there's this closet door, and then there's this guy's face in the darkness, and the guy just like loses his crap.
He's like, no, 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 no.
Yeah, yeah, you know, you can really tell, you know, like, wow, you know, major actors, man, super talented to feel that way. But I always check with my sources as to whether something's legitimate or not. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff that isn't. But this thing was very detailed, and they're getting more detailed, you know, pictures of things from the other side. And this guy, what he do? He rolls it, the thing rolls his eyes back, and he has these veins, and he's gritting his teeth like that. But did he come out and grab the guy? No.
Yeah, totally.
He was going on his appearance. You know, so sometimes if a person's energy is weak enough, yeah, you will have poltergeists grabbing people and throwing them. Because I've actually seen that, you know, myself. But that has to do with the amount of fear that that person has to do. They always attack the weakest, the ones that they consider to be the weakest. Always go after the ones they consider to be the weakest. So anyway, I guess that.
Yeah, the only last thing is that you're talking about how the density will, like, they tend to, they're like predators, the way that they poke, you know, they look for the weakest or the oldest. Those who are like you can tell they're like shaking, or they're like running, or they scream. There's all that telegraphing their fear.
Well, you know, density on the other side can see you in a way that animals can see. Animals can see your energy. And they're not in, they're literally in the real. Things are coming in like that. They can come in because they are in the real. You're stuck in a simulation because you are in the hologram simulation matrix, which means that your true consciousness is not represented by how you know, your physique. With that said, I could say that you can change certain aspects of your avatar due to what you believe in the strength of your own higher consciousness. The more that you get in touch with it, not this, you know, concept of it, but actually, you know, really getting in touch with what is your higher consciousness, not some New Age concept of what your higher consciousness is, with all these limitations. And the New Age has too many walls and too many boxes also.
And we were watching a clip together, Chief, where there was like this TV being moved and closer and closer to someone's head while they were lying on the couch.
Mm-hmm.
And there were people who were like angry that this guy who was like a paranormal investigator wasn't afraid or like running around being paranoid. It's like they try to push you into fear.
Yeah, because they want to feel like they're the norm. When someone who's not afraid of the things that they're afraid of, you know, they at times are afraid of those people. Or, like I said, they would get angry. I said, this guy's not fazed by it, but you're mad because, you know, you realize that he has a stronger constitution than you, and you don't like it. You want everyone to be like you. That's, again, is that Wreck-It Ralph, you know, mentality. Everyone should be the norm. Everyone should be afraid of this. Everyone should take the vaccination because the lying ass system tells you to just, you know, suck it up and eat more poison. Yeah, we lie to you all the time. We're not lying to you this time.
Being a perpetual liar.
Being a perpetual liar is, you know, akin to insanity.
True logic.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that I covered that. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining the forum again, and for your really great questions. And Mrs.A. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. ขอบคุณค่ะ
You're welcome. Welcome. Bye bye. Okay, bye bye.
Bye.